The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Jess De Los Santos. The health department says active COVID cases in the country could drop to 7,000 by mid-December, but only if improvements in the COVID-19 response are sustained. Over the weekend, health spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergeres says maintaining the current level of mobility and strict compliance with health protocols could bring down active cases below 10,000 by December. However, the official warns that if mobility increases to around 98% and compliance to health standards drop to 24%, active cases may remain at the 20,000 level by December 15. Vergeres says this is still an improvement from the current 24,000 active cases, but she notes the country can achieve better figures ahead of the holidays.
So our hope would be that we will all have a better Christmas, but we need to be compliant with all our protocols. Sakasakali pong tataas ang mobility to about 98% and compliance to health standards will go down as much as 24%. Tayo po ay makakapagdala ng about 20,000 active cases dito sa ating bansa by December 15.
The government has greenlit the distribution of booster shots for departing OFWs. So far, 2,000 healthcare workers have received their booster shots. Of that number, only 2% experience side effects like pain on the vaccination site, headache, and high blood pressure. OFWs who are set for deployment are next in line, and NTF spokesperson Restituto Padilla says it's only a matter of time.
Yung effective date na lang po ang ating iniintay at recognize na ito sa pasok naman sila sa A1 priority dun sa dating IATF resolution. So dahil po doon sa IATF resolution na yun, ang pagkakaintindi ko po, maaari na po itong ipatupad kung yung mga OFW ay paalis na. So dahil po sila ay pasok sa pagiging A1, being the economic frontliners, at nagbukas daan at nagbigay daan na po tayo sa A1 prioritization, pwede na po itong simulan.
Over in Europe, some governments are mulling to reimpose lockdowns and implement compulsory vaccination. This as some countries start seeing a COVID-19 relapse. Let's watch this.
Your read on what's taking place in Europe right now. Access to vaccines very high across the continent. There's a struggle at the moment and restrictions are coming back. What do you understand is happening at the moment in these nations?
Yeah, you know, it's very difficult to really understand all of this because we've got cases in Germany, in Austria that are higher than at any time in this pandemic, higher than before we had vaccines, before we had antivirals, before we even knew much about how this virus was transmitting. And the second thing is, remember, anything that you implement now to reduce case numbers won't be seen for another 7 to 10 days at least in terms of its effectiveness. So you've got a window of time now where these record numbers of cases are going to continue to climb for at least 7 days, perhaps 2 weeks. And it's can't be emphasized enough, primarily driven by unvaccinated, but we now really have to put boosters on the table to try to see if we can get protection in the vaccinated population to those 90+% levels that we were hoping to see at the beginning of the pandemic or at the beginning of the vaccine rollout.
Andy, what's the threshold to impose some of these stricter measures? The idea here of hospitalizations perhaps or deaths, but not necessarily infection rates.
Yeah, the hospitalization number is really the critical number because, you know, there will be some breakthrough cases in vaccinated individuals, but those should really skew towards symptomatic diseases that aren't going to cause you to go to the hospital. So watching the hospitalization rate and how that tracks with the case numbers is going to be important. Here in the U.S., that has gone, the hospitalization and death rates have been lower than the case rates now that we have vaccination out there. But we have to follow the hospitalization rate because that's going to be the one that really tells us about stresses on the medical system.
Andy, I remember about a year ago, perhaps a little bit more, we got news that the vaccines were incredibly effective and would prevent both infection as well as the actual development of more severe complications. Are we rethinking that? Are these vaccines not as effective as we thought that they were?
the context of effectiveness is what's changed, and the emergence of Delta has really sort of caused us to reassess a lot of those initial vaccination efficacy numbers. Now, with boosters coming on board, there's good evidence suggesting that boosters might be able to restore us to that 90+% efficacy, because boosters, particularly if they're being given 6 months or so after your initial vaccination, seem to be resulting in much higher antibody levels, and we assume that those levels will now last much longer. So now the game is changing a little bit. We're moving to that long-term immunity, and now boosters may be important for both getting greater short-term immunity and establishing that longer 6-month, 1-year immunity that'll protect you from COVID.
Now back here in the home front, most jeepney drivers in Davao City are still hesitant to ply roads despite the easing of restrictions. Gemma Vansenia tells us why.
9 out of 10 public jeepney drivers in Davao City opt out of continuing their operations, even if transportation and mobility restrictions have loosened up. In a forum held by Bayaning Chuper, Maningduran of Southeastern Mindanao Diversified Drivers and Operators Cooperative said their daily income will still not be enough for their families' needs and their vehicles' maintenance, especially as the hike on oil prices continues.
Ang mga driver ngayon dito sa Davao medyo nakakaginhawa na. Pero wala pa rin kasi ang mahal ng diesel at gasolina. Ngayong pandemic wala talaga. Nagtitiis na lang kami. Kung saan may ayuda, dun kami. Kanya-kanya ng pagsisikap.
But Duran said what bothers them more is the gradual phasing out of jeepneys due to the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program. Duran said they cannot afford to loan the huge sum to purchase the modern PUVs that will be required by 2023. With the coming 2022 polls, Duran said it will be their chance to vote for leaders sympathetic to their situation.
Ngayong 2023 daw, papalitan na kami ng mga bus. Ang mga mahihirap na driver, papalitan ng mga mayayaman na operator. Eleksyon ngayon, makakaganti kami sa kanila. Kung ipe-pace out nila kami, ipe-pace out din namin sila.
Bayaning Chuper Head Attorney Alex Abaton said it is high time for the government to address issues of transport groups, especially as they continue to be among sectors most hit by the pandemic.
Narinig po namin kanina kung ano yung mga daing nila. Halos hindi po nakakalayo yung mga problema ng iba't ibang grupo. Nandyan yung issue ng PUV modernization, nandyan yung walang kasiguruhan doon sa mga health benefits ng ating mga driver, conductor.
For News 5, Gem Avancenia, we are One News.
Back in the metro, authorities have yet to capture the scavenger that threw a rock at one of the MRT3 trains yesterday. But the management assured the public that it's still safe to use the trains. Camille Samonte with the report.
A passenger of the MRT3 was hurt after being hit by a rock thrown at a train coach traveling to Magallanes Station on Sunday. The injured passenger was immediately given first aid and was brought to San Juan de Dios Hospital in Pasay City. Based on the initial report, it was a scavenger who threw the stone. Police authorities, however, are still conducting follow-up operations as the suspect remains at large.
Wala pang suspect kami na nahuhuli dahil wala pang identity yung suspect dahil di siya nakuha ng CCTV camera.
MRT Director Mike Kapati says they had already asked nearby illegal settlers to vacate the premises, but they still keep on coming back.
Actually, alam mo, isa sa mga challenges namin yan. Hopefully, ma-address din ng local yan kasi it's beyond MRT na eh. So, within the area, sinisecure namin. Kaya lang, yun nga, pabalik-balik paalisin, tapos pabalik.
While the probe continues, the MRT3 management assures commuters of their safety.
We will secure our premises and pag-iisipan namin ano pa mga ibang bagay na pwede namin gawin para ma-prevent yung mga similar incidents. In fact, sa gabi nga, nagpapapatrolya na kami dyan eh.
The Transportation Department earlier said that appropriate legal charges will be filed against the man involved. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Delegates of Miss Grand International 2021 stunned the crowd in their recently concluded swimsuit competition. All candidates looked gorgeous as they walked the stage at the Yat Marina Chalong in Thailand. But there were those that stood out, and of course, one of them was our very own Binibining Pilipinas Grand International 2021, Samantha Panlilio. Sam definitely made her presence known in the first pre-pageant competition. If you missed out on the event, here's a sneak peek at what she offered during the event. Here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. The nationwide implementation of alert level system begins today. Senator Ping Lacson visits Pag-asa Island and gets a warning from China. And Belize wins its first international pageant after winning Miss Earth 2021. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 10:45 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.